I want to continue talking about European exploration, discovery, and colonization. Today we're going to look at the French, the Dutch, and the British voyages of discovery. So if you want to follow along, this is Lecture 5, European voyages of exploration, discovery, and colonization. Okay, so the Portuguese and the Spanish do most of the exploration, so that's why we spend more time on them. I'm going to lightly go into some of the others here. There's French explorers Giovanni de Verrazzano, Jacques Cartier, Samuel de Champlain in the 15 and 1600s. There's some really famous French explorers. Samuel de Champlain is nicknamed the father of New France because he founded Quebec. Quebec is kind of the most important French settlement in the New World. It's up in Canada. If you look at slide 2, I've got some maps of their different voyages. Some other French explorers, Louis Joliet, Father Jacques Marquette, they explored the Mississippi River. Robert Cavalier traveled the Mississippi River. He names the area he explores Louisiana in honor of King Louis of France. The English and the French will fight over this later on. We'll talk about that war later on. But this area that Robert Cavalier explores is going to cause a world war later on. Okay, New France is mostly located in Canada, and their colonization model revolves around the fur trade. France finds out that fur is a very lucrative business, especially beaver pelt. Europeans love clothing made out of furs. So, the French don't really find gold or silver, but they mostly focus on furs. And they also do a lot of fishing. A lot of Europe is Catholic, and Catholics don't eat meat on certain days, but they will eat fish. So New France provides a lot of the fish for Europe. And basically, New France has a pretty good relationship with the Indians. They use the Indians to get the furs. They give the Indians muskets, ammunition, iron cooking pots, iron tools, stuff that the Indians can't produce themselves. So generally, the Spanish are seen as not having good relations with the Indians, whereas the French do have good relations with the Indians. For the fur trade to work, France has to limit the number of colonists they allow to settle in New France. So basically, France does not allow very many people to come to the New World. Because if you have too many settlers coming in, that's going to create hostilities with the Indians. If you have Indian wars, you're going to disrupt the fur trade. So basically, France limits the amount of people that can come to the New World. France is also Catholic, so they don't allow Protestants to settle in America. This is very different than England. England allows anybody to come to the New World who's a dissenter, meaning they don't follow the state religion. But France is worried that all the Protestants who are persecuted in France will come to New France, and then New France will be this Protestant kingdom, and eventually they'll break away because Protestants and Catholics don't like each other. So basically, the thing I want you to take away is New France doesn't really grow in population. Even though it looks like there's a lot of land they own, and they don't really settle it very well, and they don't allow self-government. So the Spanish don't allow self-government. The French don't really allow self-government. And another reason that there's not much settlement is New France, Canada is a lot colder than the South. So, if you have nice weather in France, do you really want to go to Canada? Some people do. Okay, the English, they're very different than the rest of Europe in the way they colonize the New World. They do something called the Joint Stock Company. Basically what that is that's an association of individuals in a business enterprise with transferable shares of stock. So it's like a corporation. There's some early joint stock companies, the Company of the Staple, the Muscovy Company, that company traded with Russia, the Levant Company, that traded with the Ottoman Empire, the East India Company. So there's these joint stock companies that have been around for a while. Now there's advantages to this. The company does not dissolve with the death of the owner. So basically, it's a permanent company. It also has limited liability. Let's say you don't have the wealth to pay for a ship to go to the New World, but you have a little bit of money to invest. Well, maybe you get 100 people together and you pool your money and you can pay for a ship, for supplies, for colonists to go settle in the New World. If they bring back a lot of wealth, you've just gained more money. So you don't have to be super rich to help fund an exploration to the New World. And if your venture fails, you lose the amount you invested. It used to be before the joint stock company, if you invested money with somebody in a business venture and the business failed, you didn't just have to pay back what you put in, you had to pay back what everyone put in. So this allows for limited liability. You're not going to be financially ruined if this doesn't work out. So it allows a lot of middle class people to support overseas colonization. So basically, if you look at slide 11, I've got kind of a comparison between Portugal, Spain, and France. They don't really allow self-government. The monarch is basically in charge of funding these expeditions. You know, whoever pays the bills is technically in charge. That's usually inefficient. But the English, the monarch does send out and fund expeditions, but it's also done through private means as well. John Cabot, he's actually not English. I think he was Italian. He ends up going on voyages of exploration for the English in the 1490s. The English are pretty late to the game. The English had civil wars, the Wars of the Roses, that ended in 1485, and then the early years of the Tudor monarchs, King Henry VIII, you know, Edward VI, Mary I, Elizabeth I. They're kind of dealing with the whole Protestant thing. They don't really get deeply involved in exploring overseas until the time of Elizabeth I. Sorry, my slideshow went away. Okay, so Queen Elizabeth develops a large navy for the nation of England. She sends out uh, basically pirates to attack Spanish ships coming back from the New World. These pirates are called sea dogs by the Spanish. Um, and she grants individuals the right to colonize parts of the New World. In the 1580s, she granted a charter to Sir Walter Raleigh, and it stated that the rights and privileges apply to colonists as if they were born and personally reside in England. So this is really important. This is nobody else did this. If you're an Englishman and you go to the New World, you take your English rights and liberties with you. So the government of England goes to the New World with you. You're not a subject of the crown the same way the Spanish or the French are. In 1588, Elizabeth defeats the Spanish Armada. Spain and England fought a war in the 1580s, 1590s, early 1600s. Sir Humphrey Gilbert took multiple voyages to the New World. He went to Newfoundland. On his return trip to England, his ship sunk and he died at sea. Sir Walter Raleigh inherits Gilbert's charter. He sends out a fleet in 1584 to North Carolina, what would become North Carolina. He tries to plant a colony at Roanoke in 1585, and this fails. He tries again in 1587. A man named John White was the governor. They drop off the colonists at Roanoke Island, and they go back to England to get supplies. Well, that's 1587. They go back to England, and then the Spanish Armada comes. And basically, John White can't get back to Roanoke until 1590. So he brings supplies back in 1590, but he finds the entire colony missing. To this day, nobody knows what happens to the Roanoke colony. If you look at slide 17, you can see how the English colonies hugged the seaboard of the Atlantic Ocean. Basically, if you look at a map, it looks like England didn't really colonize much in the New World because the amount of land they colonize is so small. But actually, they have more citizens of England in the New World than any other country. So they're the most powerful, eventually the most powerful country in the New World because so many people go there. Roanoke was a failure, but Jamestown in 1607, that's the first successful English colony. And by 1732, all of the 13 colonies that would be present at the American Revolution have been established. Um, the English colonies in the New World are seen as a safety valve for England. You've got adventurers, religious dissenters, criminals. There's always a place to go to the New World if you're an Englishman to try your luck there. So, if you're not succeeding in England, you can go to the New World and have a better life. Now, most of the English that go to the New World, a lot of them die. Some places, half the population dies in the first few years, but hey, you at least have the chance. I want to point out something that's kind of important for you to remember. It has to do with the charter issued by James I to the Virginia Company. The Virginia Company had two parts, the London and the Plymouth Company, but they're basically going to the New World to search for gold, silver, copper, other riches. And their goal is, according to the charter, here's the religious part, to propagate the Christian religion to such people as yet live in darkness and miserable ignorance of the true knowledge and worship of God. So there's that God part of sending out voyages of exploration and colonization. But the charter also said that each of the said colonies shall have a council which shall govern and order all matters and causes. So that's that self-government in the New World. And if you look at slide 21, here's the important part. It says, also we do for us, our heirs and successors, declare by these presents that all and every persons being our subjects, which shall dwell and inhabit within every or any of the said several colonies and plantations, and every of their children, which shall happen to be born with any of the limits of the places, they shall have and enjoy all liberties, franchises, and immunities within any of our other dominions to all intents and purposes, as if they had been abiding and born within this our realm of England. So basically what this first charter of Virginia, from the very beginning, the English said, you take your English rights with you when you go to the New World. So England takes self-government to the New World. This is something no one else really does. Okay, so what's the impact of all of this? Well, the impact on the natives was not good. You had a decline in population. In 1492, when Columbus landed, there may have been 50 million Indians in North and South America. By 1700, that's down to 9 million, and that's mostly due to disease. And if you think about it, in the 14th century, Europe went through the Black Plague. They had maybe hundreds of millions die. So by the time Columbus goes to the New World, the Europeans have already experienced this massive amount of death through the plague. So they transfer that to the Indians. The Indians haven't had that yet, so they experience what the Europeans had already experienced. And just keep in mind the Columbian exchange of animals, plants, and diseases between the Old and the New World. Okay, that's all we're going to do for exploration. We'll move on to something different in the next module.